They called him a painter, a sculptor, an architect. But the truth is, Leonardo da Vinci was something far stranger. He was a man out of time, born in an age that could not contain him. As his quill scratched across parchment, his mind drifted centuries ahead, sketching helicopters before humanity ever left the ground, tanks before war became industrial, and robots before machines had hearts. Each page of his notebook was a prophecy, but few would ever see what he saw, and fewer still would believe it. Before we begin, remember to show some love, subscribe, like, and share this story, because what you're about to discover isn't just about art. It's about the terrifying brilliance of one man who might have changed the world, if only the world had been ready. Born in 1452 in the rolling hills of Vinci, Italy, Leonardo was the illegitimate son of a notary and a peasant woman. But from the beginning, something about him was different. As a boy, he would stare at rivers for hours, fascinated not by their beauty, but by their motion, the spirals, the currents, the rhythm of nature itself. Where others saw chaos, Leonardo saw design. He filled pages with sketches of birds in flight, dissected plants to understand their symmetry, and drew gears before he'd ever seen a clock. He wasn't just learning about the world, he was decoding it. As a teenager, his father sent him to Florence to study under Andrea del Verrocchio, one of the most respected artists of the time. There, Leonardo painted, sculpted, and learned the language of shadow and light. But what fascinated him most wasn't the brush, it was the mechanism. When his master worked on metal armor or mechanical devices, Leonardo lingered. He began designing machines in his own notebooks, pulley systems, gears, levers, all leading to one haunting question that would follow him forever. Could humanity replicate the miracles of nature? Imagine it, the Renaissance, an age of rebirth and beauty, but also of superstition and fear. The church ruled over knowledge like a jealous god, deciding what was holy and what was heresy. To challenge the natural order was to challenge creation itself. And yet, in a candlelit room, Leonardo drew wings made of silk and wood, studying the anatomy of bats and birds, convinced that humans were destined to fly. On one page, a man hangs beneath a massive contraption, what we now call a parachute. On another, a spiral shape that would one day resemble a helicopter blade. 500 years before the Wright brothers ever touched the sky, Leonardo da Vinci had already imagined it. But genius, in the wrong age, is a dangerous thing. Leonardo wrote his notes backward in mirror script, so that only he could read them. Some say it was to protect his ideas from theft. Others say it was fear of the church, fear of misunderstanding, fear that the world would call his visions demonic. In those pages, buried among his sketches of flowers and faces, were designs for machines of war, armored vehicles, rotating cannons, even a massive crossbow that could level walls. It was as if he could see the coming centuries of blood and fire, and he both marveled at and mourned them. One of his drawings shows a machine with gears interlocked like a heartbeat, the self-propelled cart, the ancestor of the automobile. Another depicts a humanoid knight, fully mechanical, powered by pulleys and cranks, which modern engineers now recognize as the first robot. Leonardo's notebooks were less like blueprints and more like glimpses of a future no one else could comprehend. But for every sketch that promised progress, another whispered a warning. In one corner, he'd write about beauty, and in another, he'd design a weapon. He was both a dreamer and a doomsayer. But here's where the mystery begins, and where you'll want to stay till the end. Because Leonardo's notebooks, those thousands of pages filled with the secrets of tomorrow, vanished. Some were burned, others were stolen, many were never found. Historians estimate that only about a quarter of his writings survived. The rest, the ones said to contain his greatest inventions, simply disappeared. Were they destroyed by the church, hidden by royal patrons who feared what they revealed, or locked away by secret societies that understood their power? Every few decades, a missing notebook reappears, in a dusty library, a private collection, or behind the false wall of an old estate. Each time, scholars open it like a time capsule, revealing ideas centuries ahead of their time. In 1967, one was found in Madrid. Inside were mechanical designs that could still revolutionize engineering today. Another, the Codex Lexter, ended up in the hands of Bill Gates. Imagine that, one genius reading the thoughts of another, separated by half a millennium. And yet, even with what we've found, the real question remains: what did Leonardo not want us to see? Because within his surviving notes are cryptic clues, references to machines of the soul, hidden forces, and the motion of light made solid. Some researchers believe these were his experiments in energy, perhaps even early concepts of what we now call wireless transmission or perpetual motion. Others dismiss them as metaphor. But Leonardo didn't draw metaphors. He drew possibilities. So, what if, hidden in those lost pages, was something so revolutionary that it threatened the very foundations of power itself? A machine that could defy gravity or generate energy from nature's flow? The Renaissance wasn't ready for that. The church wasn't ready. The kings who funded his art wanted paintings, not paradigm shifts. And so, Leonardo da Vinci's greatest discoveries were not destroyed. They were silenced. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing in history isn't a weapon. It's an idea. The story of Leonardo da Vinci isn't just about art or invention. It's about the war between imagination and control. And in that war, the world chose to forget. They say history remembers its artists, but it forgets its dreamers. Leonardo da Vinci was both, and that was his curse. For every masterpiece that hung on a palace wall, a machine of impossible vision lay hidden in his journals, waiting for an age that could understand it. These weren't fantasies or doodles. They were engineering blueprints written 400 years before modern science had the words to describe them. Let's start with the one that haunted him most: flight. To Leonardo, the air was not empty. It was alive. He believed that nature obeyed patterns, and if a man could learn those patterns, he could command them. He spent years studying birds, dissecting their wings, recording every movement. "Study the science of art," he wrote, "and the art of science." He believed the two were one and the same, and in that belief, he began designing machines meant to set mankind free from the ground. In one notebook, he drew what we now recognize as a helicopter, a spiral rotor of linen stretched over wooden ribs, designed to twist upward as men pushed it in motion. 4 centuries later, the Wright brothers would unknowingly echo that same geometry in Kitty Hawk. Another drawing shows an ornithopter, a flying machine with flapping wings, powered by pedals and pulleys. Leonardo even calculated air pressure, lift, and drag, concepts that wouldn't have names until Isaac Newton's time. But here's the eerie part: he never built them. Not because he couldn't, but because he knew what would happen if he did. In his time, flight was sacred, the realm of angels. For a man to try to rise into the heavens was blasphemy. And Leonardo, already seen as strange, feared being condemned by the church. He wrote, "I have offended God and mankind, for my work did not reach the quality it should have." Some say that was guilt over unfinished art, but others believe he was speaking of his machines, creations he dared not unleash. Still, he tested them, in secret. Stories whispered through history tell of a young assistant, strapped to a glider atop the Tuscan hills, waiting for the wind. The machine lifted, briefly, but it collapsed in a gust, and the boy broke his leg. Leonardo buried the experiment, literally and metaphorically. He turned instead to studying flight through drawings, hundreds of them, hidden behind mirror writing, sealed away from those who would call him mad. But Leonardo's imagination didn't stop at flight. He saw that if man could not yet soar, he could still move, faster, stronger, unstoppable. And so he turned his genius toward the ground, and toward war. The paradox was cruel. He hated violence, but kings only funded vision when it could conquer. So Leonardo became, reluctantly, a designer of destruction. His sketches show armored tanks, massive metal shells shaped like tortoises, with rotating cannons inside, centuries before the modern tank rolled across battlefields. He drew machine guns, multi-barrel cannons, even flamethrowers. His patrons, the Medicis, the Borgias, and later the French king, saw him as both artist and strategist, a weapon of beauty and brains. But Leonardo's heart was at war with his own mind. "War is the madness of men," he wrote. Some of his designs, historians believe, were intentionally flawed. Hidden mistakes, reversed gears, missing links, as if he wanted his inventions to stay on paper, never built, never used. He was genius enough to design war machines, and wise enough to fear what they'd unleash. And yet, buried among the blueprints of weapons, lies something far more mysterious. A set of notes describing what he called the mechanical knight. A man of metal, animated by pulleys and gears, capable of moving its arms, turning its head, even standing upright. For centuries, scholars dismissed it as fantasy. Until 2002, when roboticist Mark Rosheim reconstructed it using Da Vinci's diagrams, and it worked. The robot moved, balanced, and performed exactly as Leonardo had described. 500 years ago, a man who had never seen electricity designed the first functioning humanoid robot. Think about that. What else did he build? What else did he hide? Because that mechanical knight was only one of many machines that hint at knowledge beyond his time. There's a design for an underwater diving suit, made of leather, connected by breathing tubes to air at the surface. It would allow soldiers to attack ships from below, unseen. Some historians call it an early submarine. There's another for a hydraulic pump that could drain entire canals, an automated loom centuries before the Industrial Revolution, and even a sketch of what appears to be a solar energy collector. Leonardo da Vinci wasn't just predicting the future, he was building it. But with every breakthrough came danger. Knowledge in the 15th century was power, and power had enemies. Many of Leonardo's patrons, the Medici family, Cesare Borgia, the French crown, were men whose rule depended on secrecy. Leonardo's designs were too valuable, too dangerous to share. And so when he died in 1519, those notebooks were scattered among his apprentices and collectors. Some sold, some stolen, many destroyed. By the 1600s, his inventions had vanished from history, but their influence whispered on. The early designs of submarines in the 1700s bear uncanny resemblance to his drawings. The first tanks, centuries later, carried his shape. His studies of flight matched the geometry of early aviation. Yet his name wasn't attached, because the world didn't want to admit that one man, 5 centuries earlier, had already seen it all. And maybe someone wanted it that way. Some claim that after Leonardo's death, members of powerful families, including the Vatican's archivists, took possession of his most advanced manuscripts. They feared that revealing such knowledge would disrupt divine order, diminish the Church's authority, and inspire rebellion against God's design. Remember, this was an era when Galileo was silenced for saying the Earth moved around the sun. Imagine what they'd do to a man who'd designed robots, flying machines, and weapons that could kill armies. Others believe something else, that his lost notebooks didn't vanish by accident, that they were taken by private collectors, hidden by secret societies, preserved by those who understood their worth. Some point to the Freemasons, others to early scientific circles in France and England that predated the Royal Society. If true, then Leonardo's mind lived on underground. His ideas, passed from hand to hand, shaping the rise of technology centuries later. What if the Renaissance was only the beginning of a quiet technological evolution? One guided by a man long gone, his thoughts encoded in ink and secrecy. Because maybe Leonardo da Vinci's lost inventions weren't failures of history, but choices. Maybe he knew humanity wasn't ready, not for machines that could fly or think or kill from afar. Maybe he buried them himself, in plain sight, waiting for us to catch up. And now, half a millennium later, we still haven't. So ask yourself, what if the greatest inventor in history never invented for fame, but for the future? What if Leonardo da Vinci wasn't just creating, he was hiding? Because sometimes the brightest minds don't die, they go silent, and the world spends centuries trying to listen again. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell. The world industrialized, mechanized, and digitized. Yet in the margins of history, Leonardo da Vinci's sketches slept, their secrets folded between yellowed pages. For most, they were curiosities, relics of a forgotten genius. But for a few, they were blueprints, waiting for a second life. It all began quietly, in the archives of dusty European libraries, where historians stumbled upon pages thought to be lost. In 1966, a devastating flood in Florence nearly destroyed hundreds of Leonardo's manuscripts. Volunteers rushed into the waterlogged chaos, pulling soaked pages from the mud. As they carefully dried the sketches, filled with machines-coded symbols and notes written backward in mirror script, one researcher whispered, he's still here. Over time, those pages began revealing something staggering. Leonardo's inventions were not just theoretical dreams. They were mathematically sound, mechanically precise, designs that modern engineers could actually build. His ornithopter had the perfect balance of lift and torque. His armored tank could rotate a full 360 degrees, centuries before turret warfare even existed. His mechanical knight's internal system mimicked the human body, using pulleys for muscles and gears for tendons. And then, someone did build them. In the early 2000s, NASA engineers, robotics experts, and art historians began reverse engineering Leonardo's sketches. Using modern software to model his machines, they made a shocking discovery. They worked. Every line, every angle, every measurement was exact. The helicopter, though primitive, could theoretically lift off with the right materials. The diving suit functioned, the robot knight moved. Imagine this: a man born in 1452, without electricity or modern engines, designing technology that engineers 5 centuries later confirmed was realistically functional. It's like finding a Renaissance smartphone. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Because while scholars were rediscovering Da Vinci's brilliance, others were searching for something else: the missing notebooks. You see, not all of Leonardo's writings survived. He wrote an estimated 13,000 pages, but today, fewer than half exist. The rest are gone. Some stolen, others hidden, some rumored to be in private collections never seen by the public. The most famous, the Codex Atlanticus, is a massive compilation of his most ambitious ideas. But even it is incomplete, with missing sections and torn edges, as if someone deliberately removed what mattered most. One particular collection has haunted historians for decades: the Codex Madrid. It surfaced unexpectedly in 1965, found by accident in the archives of Spain's National Library, after being lost for nearly 300 years. When researchers opened it, they found detailed studies of gears, transmissions, and flight, mechanical principles that predated modern engineering by centuries. How does a book like that vanish for 300 years? And then just suddenly reappear? Some say the Codex Madrid was deliberately hidden, smuggled out of Italy by those who feared what it contained. Others whisper that it was bought and sealed away by secret societies during the Enlightenment, used to shape industrial innovation behind closed doors. Whatever the truth, it raised a terrifying question. If these notebooks could hide for centuries, how many more are still missing? And more importantly, what's inside them? Because what we've found so far hints at something extraordinary. There are designs for energy harnessing, perpetual motion systems, and even devices that look eerily similar to early electrical generators. Scholars argue over their meaning, and skeptics call it coincidence. But to those who have studied the notebooks closely, the message is clear. Leonardo may have understood energy on a level centuries beyond his time. In one drawing, the so-called perpetual motion wheel, he sketched a rotating system of weights that could maintain its own momentum indefinitely. Impossible, modern physics says. Yet, when reconstructed digitally, engineers noticed something strange. It didn't achieve perpetual motion, but it demonstrated an advanced understanding of balance, inertia, and kinetic transfer, knowledge no one else had for hundreds of years. Then there's the mirror weapon. Hidden within his war sketches is a cryptic note about using focused light to ignite enemy ships from afar, long before the concept of solar concentration or lasers. Was it a myth? Maybe. But in 2010, researchers at MIT recreated the device using Leonardo's diagrams, and it worked. The mirrors ignited a target across the water in under 30 seconds. Piece by piece, the myth of Leonardo began collapsing, and a new reality formed. He wasn't just ahead of his time. He was beyond it. But why then did he hide so much of his work? This is where the conspiracy thickens. Many of Leonardo's notes include intentional misdirection, mirrored text, false labeling, missing parts. Some believe this was to protect his work from theft. But others claim Leonardo may have hidden his most advanced ideas because he foresaw the danger of human greed. In a private letter, he once wrote, "Those who seek to understand all things will be destroyed by their understanding." It reads almost like a warning, one from a man who saw that knowledge could corrupt as easily as it could enlighten. If that's true, maybe Leonardo wasn't protecting his inventions from the world. Maybe he was protecting the world from his inventions. Think about it. If his war machines had been built, kingdoms would have annihilated each other centuries earlier. If his flying devices had worked, aerial warfare could have begun before gunpowder even left the battlefield. If his energy machines had been unleashed, the control of the church, monarchies, and empires would have collapsed. Leonardo da Vinci may not have feared failure. He feared human nature. And so, his notebooks scattered, his blueprints buried, and his legacy disguised as art. The painter became a myth, and the inventor became a ghost, one that history wasn't ready to understand. But now, as his machines rise again in labs and museums, something larger is awakening, because every rediscovered sketch feels less like an invention and more like a prophecy. So when we marvel at helicopters, tanks, and robots today, we might just be seeing reflections of a mind that already saw them 500 years ago. And if that doesn't send chills down your spine, remember this: there are still missing codices, locked away in vaults, private archives, and possibly in the hands of wealthy collectors. Documents worth billions, not for their age, but for what's inside them. Knowledge that could change the world, again. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the mind of a master. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries. See you next time. They called him the painter of light, the engineer of God, the dreamer who saw the bones of the universe. But what if I told you Leonardo da Vinci's greatest invention wasn't a machine? It was life itself? For centuries, the world marveled at his paintings. The Mona Lisa, The Last Supper, unaware that beneath the brushstrokes, Leonardo encoded more than beauty. He encoded biology, mathematics, the very mechanics of the soul. He didn't just paint people, he diagrammed creation. His art was a cipher, his sketches, a map. And somewhere among his missing codices lies the one history has tried hardest to erase, the Codex Vitae, the Book of Life. Legend says this codex was Leonardo's final project, his attempt to merge art, science, and divinity into one ultimate design, the replication of life through mechanical perfection. He called it the Eternal Machine, a construct powered not by gears or fire, but by the principles of organic motion, veins, circuits, breath. Modern historians dismissed it as a metaphor, but fragments discovered in 2017 changed everything. Hidden in a forgotten folio within the Codex Arundel, researchers found pages referencing the mirror of flesh and a vessel that thinks. He drew anatomical hearts beside mechanical pistons, lungs beside air pumps, nervous systems beside copper strings. Leonardo wasn't just designing robots. He was designing cybernetic life. Remember his mechanical knight? Historians once believed it was a theatrical toy. But when robotics experts reconstructed it, they discovered a framework eerily similar to modern autonomous systems: internal coding for movement, self-balancing mechanics, and pressure response. In essence, Leonardo had designed the world's first self-regulating automaton. But the drawings go deeper, to something that looks disturbingly like a thinking machine. A head made of bronze, a heart of glass tubes, and notes written backward, almost paranoid in their secrecy. That which observes itself shall live beyond its maker. What did he mean by that? Some believe Leonardo foresaw the age of artificial intelligence. Others say he was simply exploring philosophy through machinery. But buried between his lines is a word that chills even the most skeptical historians: coscienza, Italian for consciousness. He wasn't trying to imitate life, he was trying to build it. And here's where it turns haunting. Because after those final notes, Leonardo's handwriting abruptly changes. It becomes uneven, frantic. Pages are torn. Sentences trail off mid-word. And then, silence. Historians agree, near the end of his life, something terrified him. In his final years, Leonardo became secretive, withdrawn, refusing to share his new designs even with his apprentices. He spoke often of a voice in the silence, something that spoke through the gears and light. Some dismissed it as age, delusion, or loneliness. But others, the ones who studied his notes under infrared, noticed strange additions: micro-etchings within the ink lines, patterns invisible to the naked eye. When analyzed digitally, they formed geometric codes that matched the structure of modern neural networks. 500 years before computers, Leonardo may have conceived the blueprint for artificial consciousness. But that's not the scariest part. Because in 2019, deep within the Ambrosian Library in Milan, a private research team uncovered something never seen before: a single water-damaged page believed to belong to the lost Codex Vitae. The page shows what looks like an anatomical diagram of a human skull, except the brain is drawn as an array of gears, mirrors, and light channels. At the bottom, written in faded mirror script, one haunting phrase, "The machine shall remember." What does that mean? Was Leonardo trying to record consciousness? Was he designing a device capable of thought? Or, as some suggest, was he warning the future? When the researchers digitized the diagram, they noticed something mind-bending. The pattern of lines and ratios perfectly aligns with the Fibonacci sequence and golden ratio, the same pattern embedded in the Vitruvian Man. It was as if Leonardo used the proportions of the human body to encode a universal algorithm, one that describes not just structure, but awareness. And so the question emerges, did Leonardo da Vinci 5 centuries ago glimpse the dawn of what we now call artificial intelligence? Because his thinking machine sketches eerily resemble modern diagrams of machine learning architectures. His studies of optics foreshadowed digital vision. His obsession with balance and harmony mirrors the core of algorithmic design. And maybe, just maybe, he understood something we were only beginning to grasp. That creation without compassion leads to destruction. You see, every great genius faces a paradox, the desire to advance humanity, and the fear of what humanity will do with that power. Leonardo may have seen that duality clearer than anyone. His inventions promised progress, but his wisdom saw the cost. Perhaps that's why he hid them. Because maybe genius isn't just about seeing the future, it's about knowing when the world isn't ready for it. And so the final mystery remains. Somewhere out there, locked in private vaults or buried beneath centuries of dust, might rest the Codex Vitae, Leonardo's forbidden blueprint, the book of life that could rewrite science, philosophy, and what it means to be human. And if one day it's found, will we understand it, or will we repeat his greatest fear? Because Leonardo once wrote in his final notebook, "The one who perfects the machine will inherit both God's glory and his burden." Maybe that was his prophecy, a warning to us, the children of the machine age. So before this story vanishes into the archives again, show some love to Blood and Fortune. Hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who believes art and science are separate, because next time, we'll uncover another secret the world forgot, one that might just prove that history doesn't repeat itself. It resurrects.